when I was in college, I was like, a 20-year-old kid that didn't have a PhD, didn't know how to code properly. And I think that's actually the biggest barrier in crypto. Because if you want to build like the next Facebook, which Zuckerberg built in his dorm room, Zucker was able to do that in 2 weeks and ship a prototype and get feedback on that. That same social app can't exist in Web3, because if you build EVM smart contract, don't get it audited, don't spend time on like bulletproofing the code, you'll have an app that goes to like mainnet, and if it gets hacked, you lose your entire credibility, your entire platform. So I would say it's more geared towards the inexperienced and mid-tier developer that really wants to build an app, really build like a cool crypto app, but doesn't have the experience, that a PhD, ETH researcher has to write fully verified code.
Hi everyone, welcome to Unchained, your no-hype resource for all things crypto. I'm your host, Laura Shin. We are now featuring quotes from listeners on the show. Today we have one from Siggy Basquero on X, responding to the show on crypto kidnappings with Jameson Lopp. Siggy writes, "Zero-knowledge financial privacy tech and minimalism can be life-saving. To have your comment featured, write a review of the podcast overall or leave a comment on our video on YouTube or X." This is the February 4th, 2025 episode of Unchained. Mantle is building the largest sustainable hub for on-chain finance, launching 3 new products: Enhanced Index Fund for optimized crypto exposure, Mantle Banking for seamless daily financial experience, and Mantle X for AI-powered innovation. Learn more at group.mantle.xyz. Today's topic is the Move language and Move VMs. Here to discuss are Rushi Manche, co-founder of Movement Labs, and Olaf Carlson-Wee, CEO of Polychain Capital. Welcome, Rushi and Olaf.
Hey, Laura, thanks for having me on. Appreciate you taking a call from New Jersey out here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Laura.
So we're at this very interesting place in crypto history. There's a global spotlight on crypto in a way that we've never seen before. There's the beginnings of real adoption, especially in the case of stablecoins. And so far, we could probably say like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana have proven themselves. And Rushi, here you are coming along. You're involved with this new ecosystem that's built around a different programming language, Move. So why don't you tell us how you got into crypto and what problems you're trying to solve in crypto by building around Move?
Yeah, I'll give a quick origin story. I'm Rushi, one of the co-founders of Movement. My background is engineering, so I'm a nerd by trade. I spent my early career at United Health Group as health insurance, literally the most boring industry to be in. United Health Group literally tells you not to innovate because they own 80% of the market. But yeah, it was that first get-go into distributed systems and health insurance. Then got into crypto, I'd say 5 years ago. I was really a big Cosmos bull. My family friend was actually involved in osmosis, and I was tinkering around with CosmWasm and Rust-based programming. But I was really excited by like how you could essentially not be boring like health insurance was, and actually build products that users could use on a day-to-day basis and solve the big financial crisis that was, going around the world. So spent early career in engineering. Yeah, so I was really interested in the Move thesis around 4 years ago. When I was in college, I read this article that said Facebook was building a new language called Move. And here was opportunity for literally 1 billion users on the Facebook app to access a decentralized network, sending money from New York to Thailand within the Facebook app itself. The thesis was a high throughput, secure blockchain to power the Facebook NTM project. Unfortunately, due to regulation, wasn't what it was today. Shut down, and Aptos and Sui were the 2 main divisions that spun out. I built the first DEX on Aptos around August 2022. And November 2022, 2 weeks after FTX collapsed, was still really interested in the Move thesis, but wanted to bring it to broader markets. And this was around the time that modularity and the whole thesis around alternative VMs, alternative DA started. And yeah, the Move vision was to bring the Move and alternative virtual machines to Ethereum and beyond. And since then, it's been a roller coaster. Have had excellent backers and a long launch process that was very difficult, but we got here today. So excited to be here on the podcast.
And this question is sort of for both of you, but can you just explain like what problems in crypto you saw that you felt that Move could solve?
I'll start. I think first is the Ethereum Virtual Machine is generally slow and clunky. We look at Ethereum mainnet today, it looks at 10 to 20 transactions per second. Most layer 2s that have popped up don't really scale compared to Solana and alternative layer 1s. But we still believe in Ethereum as an asset class, EVM, and all the benefits of Ethereum liquidity. So the thesis for the Move was a twofold. First, high throughput parallelization. Block STM was the main optimistic parallelization engine, enabling you to do obviously tens of thousands of transactions per second. It inspired many of the research that Monad and alternative layer ones use today. And secondly, really focus on security. So every year there's $4.5 billion lost in smart contract hacks. So the question is, how do we enable fully formally verified smart contracts? So the move prover and the move thesis was to bring formal verification at runtime, stopping all the hacks we see. So end-to-end, like user experience and developer experience in speed and security, trying to be the fastest, most secure execution environment.
And Olaf, when I was learning about this, honestly, I was flashing back to conversations you and I had in 2016 about, you taught me about formal verification. You were excited about Tezos, like, this DAO hack had just happened. We were talking about how you can make sure the code actually executes what the coder intended, etc. But anyway, just talk to me about your interest in Move, like, why and why this particular language.
Yeah. So it's interesting because this is exactly what I was going to say, Laura, is do you remember our conversations about this nearly a decade ago? So this was right after the DAO hack had happened, but relatively speaking, smart contracts were not a popular category. And I really felt that things like DEXs, lending protocols, stablecoins, asset issuance, capital coordination, these were all relatively theoretical ideas in 2016. But it was sort of the premise of what got me excited about starting Polychain, was realizing that we were going to build this future, and crypto exchange systems and crypto financial systems in the long term were actually going to be inside blockchains. They weren't going to be proprietary companies the way we have thought about traditional finance, where you have these big central clearinghouses, central banks, and everything. Instead, like not just the money will be on chain, but the actual financial protocols and logic will also be on chain. So after the DAO hack, there was a lot of question about the security of Solidity and the EVM. So not just, blame the individual developers that are building apps that get hacked, but can we have better frameworks? And so we spent a lot of time at Polychain, we've spent for years thinking about alternative programming languages, alternative VMs, and formal verification. I think one of the big questions has also been backwards compatibility. A lot of early attempts at alternative VMs and alternative programming languages simply did not have backwards compatibility with the EVM, and it was hard for them to build sort of network effects around, a brand new programming language and a brand new sort of execution environment. So, I've been really interested in this category for a long time. And it's sort of, I followed the whole Libra saga, and it was very interesting to me that really the only thing that was lasting that came out of that was the Move language. And, in general, every developer friend of mine that was had an interest in programming language theory, etc., just thought Move was a great language because it was sort of bottom-up designed for crypto finance, right? It wasn't a programming language designed to build websites or, front ends or something and sort of transposed to doing finance the way Solidity was. So I think that been interested in the category forever. And I think that movement has sort of hit this sort of escape velocity and, nailed the sort of new development combined with backwards compatibility that I think was needed for this to succeed in the kind of modern Ethereum environment.
Yeah. So before I want to ask you about all of that, but before we move on, let's just explain a few things to the listeners. So, when we talk about formal verification, can you just give a definition or one of you?
So my layman definition of formal verification is the ability to check code correctness at runtime. So whenever you have a smart contract, right now you ship it to auditor, you pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in auditing fees. The biggest issue with that is that it's not runtime. So let's say, for example, you ship a smart contract in Solidity, there could be integer issues, type issues, memory leaks. The auditor will find it at runtime, or auditor will find before you deploy it. But once you deploy it at runtime, there's no stopping it. There's no firewall per se for crypto. So full verification is essentially checking code correctness. And what the Move VM does is at runtime. So every time you execute a Move smart contract, it says, hey, is each line of code, memory safe, type safe? Are there integer overflows? And only execute if all security parameters are met. that kind of checking does not happen in Solidity, which has led to many attacks like Curve, Kyber, the DAO. Whereas in Move, when inexperienced developers deploy smart contracts, they're met with a program that programmatically checks for any security issues. It's not end-to-end, fully complete, obviously, and it's not marketed that. It's more of like an extra step security to kind of stop all the issues or most of the issues we're seeing commonly in the EVM. So think of it like an auditor, but at runtime.
Yeah. So like, and correct me if I am misunderstanding any of this, but like with the DAO, what happened was, they had a series of smart contracts for the DAO. But then there was one point where basically the user could use their own smart contract to interact with one of the DAO, or it's really, I think it was two of the DAO smart contracts. And what happened was the way that had been written, it was like this person was requesting to remove their money from the DAO. And so it would send them money. And then after that, it would update their balance in the DAO. So the smart contract, the hacker's smart contract was interrupting the DAO smart contract in that moment in between sending the money and updating the balance. So that's why they called it siphoning the DAO. And they were basically like, they just kept repeatedly withdrawing the same amount of money. So if the DAO had been written in Move, then if somebody had tried a similar shenanigan, what would have happened in that smart contract to make that not possible?
Yeah, so specifically in the DAO, it's a split DAO function so that any token holder who wanted to leave the DAO and create their own child DAO, they had like a flow of events. So what happened in the DAO attack is like that split DAO function was like repeatedly called. Specifically, it was like the value balance. So it's like a typical re-entry attack where you keep calling the same function over and over and over again. And the attacker was able to withdraw funds repeatedly. That same re-entry attack is not common in Move because it checks for like integer, runtime safety, and actually disables re-entry altogether. So the ability to invoke multiple callback functions, like the split DAO function, is just not allowed in Move VM at all. Actually, Arbitrum was another one to actually take inspiration from this. With their own stylus program, they disabled re-entry by technically there's this concept called dynamic dispatch, and you can actually remove dynamic dispatch, which enables you to stop the re-entry and multiple callback functions being invoked. But that's kind of the same attack happened in Kyber, I believe, and Curve, where you just have one faulty function, and then once you find a line of attack and weakness, you can keep withdrawing the balance and ultimately have big effects. But fortunately, with Move VM and subsequent security benefits, that's not possible.
So this is like a bit of a random question, but maybe not, because apparently a lot of crypto teams are making this mistake. I saw an article where this was in DL News, where a Solana trading bot team had unwittingly hired a North Korean developer. And that developer apparently may have inserted some code into the app that later enabled them to steal $1.4 million from users. So I wondered, would Move prevent a crypto team from falling prey to one of these attacks by like if they mistakenly hire a North Korean dev?
I think that's a little ambitious. Like if you hire a North Korean dev, like you're screwed. There's actually this funny joke where if you in an interview process, you tell a North Korean dev, like say something bad about Kim Jong-un, they'll actually leave the chat because they're not allowed to say anything bad about him. So if you're hiring a North Korean dev, just go to the chat and be like, say Kim Jong-un is stupid, and they cannot legally say that. Like that's the easiest way, but Move can't fix your relationship. They can't fix everything.
Oh, okay. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, so presumably as long as it's a smart enough team, they would like run tests before, right? So wouldn't it be easier for them to detect that the smart contract was not doing what they intended?
So they would get a compiler flag. So let's say, for example, they were doing a swap function and they intentionally put like a memory leak into the smart contract with the goal of exploiting it. It would flag it to like the developer team and like whoever's compiling the code. But if you wanted to override it because you're a North Korean hacker with bad intentions, there's nothing stopping you. So the premise of full notification isn't to stop bad actors. If you're coding a rug, you're coding a rug. There's nothing you can do about that really besides not coding a rug. It's more intended
It's just make sure that your rug like is very effective or something.
Yeah. I think the way I say it's like the idiot proof veil. So like when I was in college, I was like, a 20-year-old kid, didn't have a PhD, didn't know how to code properly. And I think that's actually the biggest barrier in crypto. Because if you want to build like the next Facebook, which Zuckerberg built his dorm room, Zucker was able to do that in 2 weeks and ship a prototype and get feedback on that. that same social app can't exist in Web3, because if you build EVM smart contract, don't get it audited, don't spend time on like bulletproofing the code, you'll have an app that goes to like mainnet, and if it gets hacked, you lose your entire credibility, your entire platform. So I would say it's more geared towards the inexperienced and mid-tier developer that really wants to build an app, really build like a cool crypto app, but doesn't have the experience, that a PhD, ETH researcher has to write fully verified code. So it's more geared towards like younger, inexperienced, the JavaScript like feel where you can go 0 to 1 with apps and write secure code. But ultimately, like if you want to write a rug, you want to write a scam, nothing's stopping you from doing that.
The other thing I would add to that, Laura, is that formal verification, while not a sort of security silver bullet, is much more important in smart contract development, because oftentimes in smart contract development, it mimics a little bit more hardware than software sometimes, where you don't, in traditional software development where it's a web app where you can sort of cloud push updates, it's sort of ship it fast. If it has a bug, we can just fix it in real time, right? Smart contracts, when they're launched, are much harder to change or upgrade, and oftentimes are meant to be immutable and can't be changed or upgraded for security reasons. So the development cycle to get a smart contract live, it should look and feel pretty different than the development cycle to just sort of launch a website, which you sort of in real time say, oh, shoot, a button's broken, let's just fix it, right? In a smart contract, if it's broken, like it's much, much harder to upgrade and migrate funds and all of that. So like crypto itself lends itself to a more rigorous engineering process before the launch of V1. And so I think formal verification has specifically a good fit for cryptocurrency systems.
Yeah, the last quality of move that I wanted to call out was, I guess, this philosophy, or I'm not sure what to call it, but I read about this resource-oriented programming, which has a few different principles. Could you just sort of explain? This is like, I guess, the way I was looking at it was sort of like ways that this language treats crypto assets as special and helps to ensure the security. So could you just give a sense of like what some of those principles are?
I'll use like game development as my analogy. So if you want to build like a Call of Duty with Move, you could specify each in-game item as a module. So it's more similar to like React, I would say, where you can specify custom data sets. So for example, Solidity, you have fixed objects. You have to use like what's bare bones, and in the framework, it's really hard to experiment and have your own asset classes within programming itself. With Move, you can essentially customize each in-game asset, each skin, gun, map, whatever, as its own customized module. And then with that module, you can have specific rules. So using a DeFi example, if I specify, let's say, a lending market, and then I give a specific module in the lending market only admin rights to the contract deployer. So say, for example, I'm deploying an ETH lending vault, and I have a module that says only change this module when me, the contract deployer, invokes this function. That means that no outside developers, no outside influencers can change permissions, can change who is moving account balances. You essentially have flexibility on how the object is constructed in traits, programming, actual integer lengths and byte lengths, but specifically on account access and permissions. So you can say, okay, there's 200 objects in the game. Here's how much controls the skin, the gun, the clothing of the avatar has. Only give access to those permissions to set characters and set users and addresses, and completely restricted from everyone else. So I like to explain it like I don't know if listeners have coded in React or not, but it's very similar to those principles in JavaScript, where you have complete end-to-end autonomy over how you design objects and have each object be its own module. So you can customize how it looks, how it's programmed, and how the security traits are. So compared to Solidity, it's kind of like you use what's out of the box and use what the EVM gives you, which means if you're trying to build customized DeFi apps or customized games, it's very, very difficult to find the settings that match for your own security needs and your own programming needs. So I like to say Move is the React of JavaScript.
All right, so in a moment, we'll talk about Movement Network, but first, a quick word from the sponsors who make this show possible. Mantle is transforming the future of on-chain finance. With a $4 billion treasury and successful products like Mantle Network and METH Protocol and Ignition FBTC, Mantle is launching 3 new innovation pillars that will bridge blockchain with everyday banking. Enhanced Index Fund, offering optimized exposure to BTC, ETH, SOL, and USD through advanced staking opportunities. Mantle Banking will deliver seamless blockchain-powered services. Mantle X brings AI innovation to decentralized finance. Experience the future of finance with Mantle. Follow Mantle on X to learn more about the next generation of on-chain finance. We have a couple more listener comments responding to the interview with Jameson Lopp on crypto physical attacks. On X, Kevin Owaki wrote, OPSEC hack, just be crypto poor / don't have a lot of tokens. D. Luckton on YouTube wrote, quote, I've got nothing to worry about. I lost all my crypto in a boating accident. Again, if you want to hear your comment featured on the show, please write a review or leave a comment on an episode on YouTube or X. Back to my conversation with Rushi and Olaf. So, we were just talking about like all these different principles around the language, but then now you yourself have just recently launched the developer mainnet for Movement, which is your MoveEM-based layer 2. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think ultimately we believe in Ethereum as a global settlement layer. We believe that the biggest issues with alternative L1s, especially at launch, is bootstrapping, initial liquidity, and user base. So the thesis behind Movement was bringing the benefits of Aptos, Sui, alternative L1s to existing liquidity base and user base. So the developer mainnet or Movement's public mainnet that's incoming is the first real attempt at bringing the Move Virtual Machine, the DM program, to Ethereum. And I think I built the first DEX in Aptos back in 2022. And the biggest issue there was bootstrapping liquidity, getting LPs, family offices, big whales to deposit assets. Because post FTX, no one wanted to buy altcoins. They pretty much held on to Ethereum, Bitcoin, and stables. Same thing with the Ethereum ecosystem, where there's a lot of capital tied up in Ethereum whales, Bitcoin whales. That's where the true liquidity is. So our vision is to bring that Ethereum liquidity, that Ethereum DeFi, the Ethereum culture that we've loved for the last years, that's been bulletproof, and give a flavorful twist that actually scales it. If you look at the layer 2 landscape today, I would say it's majority lagging behind Solana. Solana is kicking basically all butts in terms of high throughput execution, in terms of go to market and overall culture for developers. And I think that's largely because the EVM L2 landscape hasn't been much product differentiation. If you look at ZK or optimistic rollups, obviously there's certain benefits technically, but it feels mostly the same. Alternative VMs actually give a flavorful twist to Ethereum, where you can bring the principles of alternative layer 1s with speed, security, different programming languages, and still enjoy the benefits of Ethereum. So Movement's mainnet is the first step in that direction, and we look forward to competing with Alt L1s with Ethereum security.
Okay, so when I was learning about this, so obviously I understand like Ethereum is the oldest smart contract blockchain. It's very tested. It has wide decentralization. Like there's many advantages. And yet, here we were just talking about how Solidity is not a great language for security and Move is like better for security. So it feels a little bit counterintuitive that this would settle to Ethereum or that you'd be using Ethereum for security if it's like inherently built on a language that's less secure. So I don't know. Yeah, especially with Olaf, because you have such a long history. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
What I would say there is keep in mind that the Ethereum security is financial security at the sort of network level. So in general, roughly the security of an entire blockchain system is equivalent to the market value of all the coins combined, right? And so in the case of Ethereum, we're not talking about individual app security that would come with Solidity, but rather it's sort of the network security that comes with the proof of stake system and the value at stake in that system. So it's taking a more agile framework for developing individual applications or contracts, but then using the security of like the Ethereum staking system to validate, them on a network level.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I still wonder, I don't remember the exact examples, but there were previous hacks where it was like a new technology made a hack possible that wasn't possible before. I feel like one of them was, around one of the ERC token standards. But anyway, I'm blanking on exactly what that was. But the point is that, is there a scenario down the line where, like, because it is built on this language that wasn't purpose built for dealing with crypto security, that could happen? I totally get what you're saying, but I just was wondering if there's like a future development that could come.
I think a broader question is like the thesis behind modularity introduces more complexity. So look at alternative DA. The counter case, like Celestia even, was that using alternative DA in theory is less secure than Ethereum DA. And I think like what Celestia has proven, and the DA market has proven, is that users, application builders, infra builders, they want UX and DevX first. So like arguably Celestia security is good enough today compared to Ethereum security. Developers are confident enough to sell DA to alternative DA with the trust assumptions that, Celestia isn't as secure as Ethereum DA, but it's good enough and provides user experience, developer experience. So that's why I build on top of it. Same thing with, I would say, like alternative VMs. Like, yes, it's less Lindy proof. It hasn't been around as long as the EVM, hasn't been as battle tested per se. The bear case may say for alternative VMs is it hasn't been, billions of dollars in TVL on it. But I think that's changed in the last 3 or 4 months. Like Solana TVL, Solana transaction volume, SVM transaction usage has, the president of the United States launched a coin on SVM, not the EVM. And secondly, the Move VM has over 2 billion in TVL with very limited to no hacks to date. So I think the thesis that it's less battle tested is being chipped away every day, and it's getting more and more battle tested. So to actually go against your point that it wasn't purpose built for security, Move was built for security. It was built with formal verification in mind and designed to be the most secure execution environment for crypto, while Ethereum was designed to be the most secure settlement layer for crypto, where, like Olaf touched on, it's the most secure settlement layer in terms of economic security, in terms of not getting, 51% attack vectored, and having large funds deposited on chain with the ability to trust that 4 years from now, 10 years from now, the funds will be permissionlessly stored. So I think what, the modular landscape brings is keeping Ethereum's bedrock economic security and experimenting on different styles of execution layer security, DA layer security, sequence of security, and having the ability to experiment because you have a solid bedrock that is Ethereum.
Well, let's just talk for a moment about what Ethereum's future is. Like, I'd be curious, especially for Olaf to weigh in, because obviously you have known Ethereum for so long, but is that basically where you think Ethereum's future is headed, just to be a settlement layer for a bunch of rollups and side chains?
I mean, the short answer is probably mostly, right? It's to scale Ethereum, the roadmap has been for a long time layer 2 systems, right? And what I like about this is there are dozens, if not closer to maybe hundreds of different teams, all sort of working on different scalability solutions on top of Ethereum. So you have so many different teams and so many different approaches that it's like this extremely decentralized approach to innovation and architecture, where it's like many, many people are running many experiments all at once and sort of may the best system win. I do think that the downside to it is basically fragmented application logic and fragmented liquidity across different L2s. So I also think that in that future, for Ethereum to successfully scale, we need all the different L2 systems to be able to talk to each other with ease. Right now, moving from Ethereum to an L2, you're very much siloed to the application logic and liquidity inside that L2. So it sort of feels like, from a user perspective, just moving from Ethereum to like another chain, right? And until we get all the different L2 systems, with interoperability, you're not going to have that nice unified user experience that you get with like a just Solana base layer or Ethereum L1, where, you don't have to think about where the app is built. You're just sort of, it's all one ecosystem. It's all one pool of liquidity. It's very easy to move across these things. So I think Ethereum is in this spot where we sort of have all the L2 experiments live and running, but we need to move to like more decentralized sequencers, like across the landscape. And then we need to move to shared liquidity, where it's very easy for the end user to just move across L2 systems seamlessly without having to even think about it. The end user needs to just think Ethereum, right? And today, that's really not how it works, because they have to be very conscious of the L2 system that they're interacting with.
Well, Rushi, I did want to ask you about a little bit of a spicy tweet that I saw you posted. You said that you thought EVM L2s will go to zero, and you said, quote, "They mostly all suck compared to Sol." So can you explain why you think EVM L2s don't make sense today?
If you've used an EVM L2, you can probably relate. It's like, besides base and arbitrage, I'd say, using anything else on Ethereum is quite painful compared to Solana. Like Solana, you have load up your Banner wallet, put some money in there, like go trade meme coins. And we look at volume today, and majority retail volume and user volume is flowing towards Solana. Base is a close second. And I think that's mostly obviously because of the Coinbase connection. I think what EVM L2s have lacked compared to Solana is user experience. If you try trading on Solana, you get your transaction confirmed in seconds. It's fast. Doesn't really go down anymore. And the user experience is pretty great. While EVM L2s, they still lag in terms of throughput. I think the best case study was Inscriptions, which was like around a year ago now. Every EVM L2 tapped out like 150 TPS. Most went down. Sequences shut down. While Solana, Aptos, and Sui, even near, say, the alternative L1s that prioritize highly throughput, highly scalable execution layer, and better consensus, they all stayed uptime, and they were able to process thousands of transactions a second. Even like Near was, clocking on 1500 TPS. I think TPS generally is a vanity metric, but I think in terms of scalability, and when you look at big events like the Trump coin, right? Obviously, like Solana was actually able to decently handle it, which compared to a year ago was a different story. If that happened on, given insert eval 2, I'm 99% sure the sequencer will go down. There'll be some issue there. So I think like Ethereum as a liquidity base has proven itself, but the programming and developer ecosystem is still nascent. So I think the Rise movement and some alternative VMs that have really shown what we could bring the Solana UX, the Solana developer experience, all the benefits of, better programming, and bring that to Ethereum's culture is where, alternative VMs can actually make Ethereum competitive with Solana in terms of go-to-market distribution. As it stands, besides base, it seems like Ethereum L2 is rather lost in terms of adoption.
And Olaf, it looks like you're nodding your head.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything Rushi said is pretty on point. It's easiest to understand this if you just go use the systems, and you just try to buy, a meme coin, say, like something that should be very easy, right? And is designed for like an average retail user who's just trying to have fun maybe, or make a small investment. Go try to use, the stack of technologies on Solana, and then go try to use, the same sort of, get the same functionality out of a lot of different ETH L2s. It's just confusing. And it's sort of more confusing at every layer, like at every step of the way. It's more confusing. It takes a bit longer. There's less liquidity. It's like the whole mental framework is harder to understand. So I just completely agree.
But it's also a culture thing. Like we look at Solana and like the user experience, developer experience apps. Arguably, meme coin trading and the casino, we call it, is one of the biggest PMFs in crypto today. Whether we like it or not, Ethereum culture felt like didn't really embrace that until like very, very recently, and until they're forced to. I think Ethereum, as it should in the early days, focus a lot on research, focus on terminology, and like doing things by the book, which allowed ecosystems like Solana and alternative layer ones to defy the norm and embrace the degen, the shitcoiners, the casino, if you will. So I think from a culture point of view, Ethereum took a step back and chose like the route of not being being incredibly neutral, not prioritizing the long-term like research arc and research gain, which I think is net bullish for the goodness of ecosystems. But I think there needs to be a culture in Ethereum that embraces the Gen Z TikTok 12-year-old that makes $1 million trading the Trump coin, right? That is, whether we like it or not, the onboarding gateway for people in crypto, as it was traditional stocks on Robinhood on Instagram like 5 years ago. So I think Ethereum has been lacking that culture. But I think, with teams like Movement and like future teams coming, that pep in the step is coming. And I think even Base is working on kind of improving that culture.
Yeah, so I know we're here to talk about like movement and stuff, but can't help but ask just a couple more ETH questions. Because I don't know if you guys saw, Hayden Adams tweeted that he had at one point thought about like Ethereum offering to all the L2s that they would like buy them out, like their coins, so that everything would soon be ETH based. And then Vitalik, his blog post last week basically, suggested that he suggested a number of things, but one of the things was doing native rollups in Ethereum, which, would kind of integrate more of that activity into the protocol itself. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that, or do you sort of feel like, because it does feel like, this whole past year has been this sort of, I'm going to call it an existential crisis for Ethereum, the whole thing about the parasitic L2s. And then, so I don't know if you guys, do you sort of feel like this is this moment in time when things are just slipping away from Ethereum, or do you feel like it's going to be okay? Or I don't know.
I mean, I agree, Laura, that it's this question to me of, do the existing network effects around end users, around value in the asset, and around developers in Ethereum outweigh, the speed and momentum of the growth pretty much of the Solana ecosystem? I mean, it's, there's been other systems out there that have onboarded, I would say, like a little bit of a different class of user, and maybe been a little bit on average more oriented around like small cap coin trading. This is like Binance Chain, Binance Smart Chain, I would say, is like a reasonable example of that. But I do think, I love that just all the experiments are being run, because I really am a big believer in sort of crypto as a whole just benefits from the most experiments being run and them competing in an open marketplace. And it's great to me that we have this very, very sophisticated approach with dozens of different teams building a sort of modular architecture, around Ethereum. And then we have sort of a more focused singular team in Solana, building this just one highly performant L1. So I agree, and I'm kind of happy about it for crypto as a whole. But I also, we're Polychain. I kind of put it in the name so that it would be clear from the beginning. I never get religious about anything. It's like I'm a pragmatist and always just want crypto as a whole to move as fast as possible and board the world.
I think my answer is modularity will save Ethereum. I think the first wave of Ethereum scaling was very pragmatic. It was, okay, here's what the godfathers of Ethereum told us to do. Here's how we scale, and we follow the textbook. And I think what the market's proven is that no one cares about your textbook. No one cares about what the white paper was written 5 years ago. How do you get users? How do you get a good developer experience? How do you scale? And I think what modularity introduced is it's okay to be unconventional. It's okay to be alternative DA. It's okay to have fast finality settlement. It's okay to be a side chain, not be particular L2. No one really cares. I think modularity will enable Ethereum liquidity as a settlement layer to be extended, and that will be Ethereum's role. And the new wave of builders on Ethereum, like even like abstract chains of someone we're a fan of, their ability on Celestia, but really their whole focus is on the Pudgy Penguins ecosystem, bringing that to layer 2, and they're objectively saying, okay, we don't want DeFi, we don't want to be like optimism, arbitrum, we want to focus on streaming and get a bunch of streamers trading on chain. So I think like this new wave of modular L2 scaling solutions, whatever you want to call it, will be Ethereum's saving grace and the ability to actually compete with L1s, while the old class of we're going to read 5 white papers and circle jerk about who's the best L2 kind of dies.
Oh boy. Well, I have to ask you a question in that vein about move-based chains, because, as we've been discussing, Aptos and Sui, I don't even know, is it Sui or Sui? I hear both.
I think it's Sui.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have Aptos and Sui that already use Move as well. So what is the differentiator for a movement network?
For context, there's 2 variants of Move, which is unfortunate in how it kind of came to be. I would say Aptos style or DM style is more in line with how the DM blockchain was supposed to be, 4 or 5 years ago, while Sui looks more like Solana today. It's like dynamic parallelism versus static parallelism. Kind of looks and feels more like Solana in terms of a developer experience. So I think like Movement sits in between. We really believe in Move. We think that Move is the best execution environment. It's really purpose built for blockchains. The analogy I like to give is like PHP was the first framework to build websites. People built PHP. I used PHP. I hated it. Then JavaScript came to market, and you had React, Vue, Angular, and you can build JavaScript websites in like the blink of an eye. And majority of websites now they launch are JavaScript. Similarly, Solidity was the first 15,000 developers. You had Uniswap, Aave, Curve, DeFi 1.0, and that set the foundation. But then you look at, okay, how do we get actually millions of users on chain? How do we get millions of developers? And it has to be in a purpose-built language. And I think Rust and the Rust-based frameworks is similar to JavaScript. And you have React and Vue, which were the two JavaScript frameworks, and that's Move and SVM in crypto. And you look at the fastest growing systems today, according to Electric Capital, SVM was the fastest growing system, Move was second, and the market share for Move is actually increasing faster than SVM did for the first 2 years. So I think Move has solidified itself as the third, developer framework, and Movement's role is, spreading the gospel of Move to Ethereum and beyond. When I started Movement November 2022, pretty much every VC and everyone told me that Move was dead. Aptos and Sui of VC scams. And now Sui's at like $50 billion. Aptos is also doing pretty well. And all those VCs that didn't believe in Move are punching themselves. So I think Move has solidified itself, and Movement's role is bringing into Ethereum and kind of tying the knots between the Silicon Valley, Facebook, DM vibe and the Web3 culture and the Web3 community. And we're proud to be in between that.
Yeah, honestly, something I'm noticing, and since I'm not a developer, I'm not sure if this analogy is correct, but so I noticed, first of all, you said that when you were in college, you tried to build this DEX and Solidity, but it took you like 6 months and you had to spend all this money in these audits. And then later when you did it in Move, it only took 3 weeks for you to ship a test net. And it reminds me of, this is like ages ago, but when they were building Ethereum, Jeff Wilke, one of the Ethereum developers, and Gavin Wood, who was the other one, they were both building different clients, and Gav chose, I think, C++, and Jeff chose Go. And when it came time to launch, because it took like 30 minutes for developers to like download all the stuff to start Gavin's client, and it was like a minute for the other one, like then the Geth basically just took off. And now still today is like, I think, is it still the majority, or not majority, but at least it's the leader, right? In terms of clients for, Ethereum. So it sort of just like feels like what you're saying is like the easier it is for developers to work in these languages, like the more you can just get off into like a liftoff phase. So who knows? It does feel like maybe the language itself is just going to be that moment where we see sort of hockey stick rise.
I think when people say that EVM has won, I always say like won what? And the analogy I say is there's more developers at Facebook company today. They're all crypto, which like I think we're very, very early in the developer landscape. I think majority of applications that want to compete with Web2 incumbents, like the next Uber, Pinterest, etc., will need to use smart contracts. And there's a big opportunity. And we're seeing it today with like Solana, SVM, for the new apps to be converted to, Rust-based programming, SVM, MoveVM. And my prediction is 5 years from now, SVM and MoveVM have the dominant market share over EVM.
Yeah, and Laura, I have another interesting sort of historical metaphor for how the developer experience like radically transforms the growth of this whole system. So on Bitcoin, one of the prominent Bitcoin developers back in the day, Mike Hearn, tried to build an on-chain crowdfunding system called Lighthouse, and it took him almost a year to program. Then when Ethereum was launched, people could program ICOs, very quickly, and it maybe took people to just a few days to program an ICO. And you saw that sort of developer experience get that much better, the ease to launch get that much faster. And then, we had this kind of era of Ethereum tokens and ICOs that obviously happened on ETH and not Bitcoin. Now you fast forward again to like a pump fund style experience. And once again, the ease to launch has dropped like another big order of magnitude. And it turns out it wasn't nearly easy enough to launch ICOs on Ethereum. Like it's ironic because I think one of the criticisms back in like 2017 was like, it's too easy almost to launch ICOs. Like there's too many tokens, right? But in reality, there weren't nearly enough, right? There should be a token for every post on every social media app. There should be a token for every person on planet Earth. And I'm not joking. Like, I really think the direction that we are going is no code, launch of tokens in the background of every social media post. And so rather than sort of centralized algorithms, on like your Twitter feed or your Facebook feed or your Instagram feed determining what you see, there's actually a market, a financial market, like of creation and curation, or sort of reposting, retweeting for every bit of social media content that creates a sort of pump fund style coin that rewards the creator, right, and the early curators of that post. So like, this is actually the direction we're going. Like, anecdotally, one of the really fascinating things I've heard from some like deep trenchers is that they actually use pump fund as their news source. And this is because like every time there's a big current event, something happens, it's like, immediately it will be launched on pump fund. And when it's sort of a really big event, there'll maybe be like 6 coins launched, right, really quickly on pump fund. And it's sort of like when you're watching that feed, because it's directly monetizing the news through the coin, it's actually the fastest, most respondent system, even above like Twitter, right, for cutting edge, news and like just what's happening in the world, et cetera. And so it's like when pump fund becomes a news source, okay, we really are seeing the merger of like these micro financial markets with like content consumption and information distribution. And it makes a lot of sense to me that conceptually, the way we get price discovery of assets in traditional financial markets, we would get price discovery of relevant content in sort of content on social media markets. And so I think that, the distance we've come from like Mike Hearn's Lighthouse, right, to like pump fund being the news source for like these Gen Alpha trenchers is like, it's remarkable, but it really is a story of developer experience getting easier and easier and easier to launch, right? And I think it's like there's no limit to how easy it can be, right? Like, we thought it was easy with Ethereum. It's like I said, it wasn't nearly easy enough. And, even pump fund, right? We're probably going to look at some future version where you can just use an AI and say, hey, I want the token to do this. And it just does it, right? Like it. So you just got, your voice app open, and just like when you see something happen in real life, you're like, this is going to be a news event. I'll launch my token by just talking into my phone, right? Like the more we can do the abstraction, the more we're going to see sort of like the way people use these things. If there's one thing I can predict, is that it's unpredictable, right? The idea that like what Mike Hearn was building on Bitcoin would someday become like social media, it's inconceivable, right? Like nobody can really like see all those stars connect, even if later it sort of looks like, that's sort of obvious the way it went. It's never obvious. And so bringing costs down and making everything easier just leads to these sort of unknown unknowns emerging, and these outcomes that like nobody really saw coming. But, now it's sort of becoming more and more crystal clear to me the way this all goes.
Well, let's hear you riff a little bit more, because I know you've been thinking a lot about AI agents in crypto. So where do you think that whole future is going? Yeah.
Okay. So, this kind of, I've been thinking a lot about these like social media curation markets, right? But the second thing, or maybe first thing actually, that I've been thinking a lot about is pretty much embedding autonomous agents on chain, right? And giving them wallets that they uniquely have access to, and sort of go out into the world and hustle and try to make money, right? And so, I think it is so tantalizing, the idea that I could own like, a percentage through a token of some agent that just never stops working, right? He's out there just whatever it is, right? It's like posting, messaging people, making AI music, right? And launching it, making AI videos and content, like trading in DeFi markets, like market making, running some quant strategy in DeFi markets, doing venture style investing. Eventually, like these AIs are going to be more sophisticated than humans at pretty much all this. And I really think that giving them an on-chain or of autonomous identity will be the best mechanism to bootstrap fundraising. So when you have this new AI system and you say this thing is going to be an incredible market maker, and I tuned it specifically for that use case, I need to crowdfund initial capital. You sort of launch the AI. It's owned in a sense by all the token holders, right? But it's totally autonomous and trustless. So even the dev that made the AI, you're not going to really need to trust them per se, right? Like they're not going to be able to shut it down or change it or steal the funds or anything like that. And so where we're headed again, I think, is sort of pump fund for AIs, right? Where when you get the ease with which you can launch an AI agent to be like really, really, really easy, and you get the ease with which you can embed it, inside like a TEE style architecture where it has its own private key. This is like the secure enclave on the iPhone, right? And it can access its own private key uniquely. You make that really easy, and then you make like tokenizing that and crowdfunding it like pump fund style really easy. I think we see an explosion of financialized agents that are out on the internet, like hustling while you sleep, and you own this sort of portfolio of, autonomous agents. Like it's like I own a few that do market making for me. I own a few that post on social media. I own a few that make video content, and they're sort of out there competing, with each other, going head to head. And you're going to also see like really efficient liquidity because of that. So, one AI might be good for like a couple weeks. And then, really quickly, somebody makes a better one at covering the news in Philadelphia or something. And like, the capital shifts over to the new one. So I think this kind of like AIs will do a lot of the sort of work in a sense that people do today. And I think the way people benefit could end up being like everyone is a bit of a investor in all of these different AI systems. And because like so much of the actual labor is done autonomously, the value actually ends up accruing to like the underlying owners of these autonomous AIs, like basically through token portfolios.
Yeah, honestly, you know what this reminds me of? I can't remember what they were calling it, but Ian Lee's group at some point, they had like this way where you could launch your own investor DAO. I forget the name of it, but the point is, according to like certain rules, like you can have up to 100 people that all go in on a little investment together, and they would all like make their own token. And then like, let's say there was one person who was like really good at DeFi, they would kind of entrust them to like make the calls for the group when it came to investing in DeFi. Then there would be like an NFT person who, they would do the NFT trades, whatever. And anyway, the point is that I just realized like it's the exact same thing, except you remove the people and you just have a little AI agent that's doing it. But it's essentially that kind of group chat investment that, he was talking
But
about.
Laura, if you want to take it one step further, that's very interesting. Picking these AIs or just picking coins, like AIs will be some of the coins, like there'll be other coins, but just pretend everything is coins, right? From everything from, e-dollars, e-gold, all the way down to like this individual post in social media, right? Picking these things is going to be pretty tricky for the average person, right? And so I do think there is going to be a lot of like entrusting specialization to investors, right? That sort of do it for them, right? For a fee. Because I don't want to, I don't think in the future, everyone in the world will be in the trenches. I think there will be a lot of professional trenchers and then a lot of people entrusting them with money. And one of the problems with that is that's basically a fund, right? It's sort of a thing like Polychain. But with a thing like Polychain, there's a lot of fixed costs that go into launching it and maintaining it. And there's a substantial need for like trust and audit, right? So that the person you're entrusting your money to gets sort of double checked and can't misreport their returns or steal your funds or something like that. An interesting solution to those problems is the blockchain, right? So you could imagine like on-chain funds or pools of capital that can be very low cost and are sort of real-time audited, with people having a lot of ability to move in and out of this. So you sort of launch a fund, it creates a pool of capital that launches a token that roughly tracks like the NAV or net asset value of that pool of capital. And you have the fund manager go to work, right? If they're making money, then the token should like track the upwards move of the net asset value, right? But then those like tokens that are sort of LP interests, so to speak, in the fund are tradable on secondary markets. So the sort of meta here is that you end up trading people, right? And all those people are all these like micro fund managers that are actually picking the underlying assets, which again, in this case, are like the pump fund news cycle or the autonomous AI agent. But I do think it's sort of the next level of abstraction. We've seen this interaction between social media influencers and, like crypto coin picking, right? And the future here is being able to just invest in like the cash tag of that influencer, right? So you just say, you know what? I just want to pick everything they pick. And it capitalizes them. And then your performance is just tag along with them. They're like my micro fund manager. And then you can have this portfolio of fund managers, right? So like this portfolio of portfolios, I think is like the meta that will allow average people to benefit from all this without having to sit on the pump fund home screen for hours a day.
Okay, wait. So I don't know if I fully understood. So basically, where I was going was like, you could have an AI agent that replaces a person, but you're saying, no, you'll have a bunch of AI agents that do replace people, but then you'll have people on top who are curating the different.
And like it is a bit of a rabbit hole where it's like, will you have AIs curating the AIs, etc., right?
CGI.
Yeah, like it's so I agree, Laura, and that is fuzzy to me. Like my crystal ball on that part is like, I'm not quite sure what comes first, right? Whether it's like picking people or picking AIs only. But the end game of it is like a portfolio of portfolios, right? Where you kind of have, you're picking pickers, right? Because there are going to be so many assets. It's going to be impossible for the average person to sort of keep up. So they're going to pick pickers who then go like into the fray and specialize, like hyper specialize in one little area for a fee. So I think you're going to see blossoming of like literally millions of funds with hyper specialization and very, very low fixed costs that make it possible.
I think the analogy that I dropped was the way that Robinhood replaced bankers and crypto replaced venture capitalists and to some degree founders. Like AIXBT is like the top KOL or influencer on like various mindshare metrics. So where we're heading is like maybe Olaf's and mine job are replaced in 3 years by AI. And I think Olaf and I agree that means we did our job, and maybe that's the end state.
Yeah, well, Olaf, I just had Chris Dixon on and I did ask him this question, but do you feel, I threatened maybe is too strong of a word, but do you feel like there's a potential for you to be disrupted?
If I lose my job, it means a lot of other people lost their job first. It doesn't, like basically the short answer is no. Like, I don't really feel threatened, but like, if AI was able to do what I do, it means it's doing a lot of things. Because I think in general, like long-term VC investors are taking into account like so much multifaceted, multimodal, complex data and putting it into some little black box algorithm in their brain and trying to spit out this like probabilistic multiverse of futures, right? I think it's probably one of the hardest things to have an AI do. If I lost my job, it means nobody has jobs, sort of. Which I by the way, I think this is like great, right? Like the reason everyone like has jobs is because we need people to do them. I think if we could enjoy all the wealth of labor without the labor, it mostly becomes like a distribution of wealth question, which is like, let's make sure that the wealth created by AI is broadly distributed. And as I said, I really think the solution to that could be agents living inside blockchains.
Yeah, when Shaw Walters came on the show, he said something like that his dream was that everybody would become wealthy off of this so we could all live their lives or live our lives. And then somebody tweeted at me like, oh, that sounds like communism. And I was like, yeah, I think it's super different. Like if it's the government doing it top down versus like it's naturally because capitalism makes so much money for everybody that you all become wealthy. I think that's like a different thing. But I did want to also ask, just when you were talking about the news thing for a moment, I was like, wait, could my job be disrupted? But then I realized like it seems like what the pump fund people doing, at least for now, like maybe down the line, it could go a different place, but like they're creating the coins on Pump Fund based on the news. So it's like people in my job, like, report the news, and then that's like affecting things. Although, yeah, social media plays a role and whatever. But point is that, yeah, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm okay for now. But
I mean, I think ultimately the human element is like creating trends, right? So like, I think Olaf's job will never be replaced because ultimately the top venture capitalists are making the trends and making it, the AI crypto, the DeFi, AI, they're making the general trends industry should go in, and also they're making founder bets. So like this founder is going to be the face, American DeFi, like Ethereum DeFi. But I think like where it gets kind of tricky is like the analysts, the out of college, the investment banking analysts or the venture analysts, their jobs are probably getting replaced because I can probably do diligence and half the costs, twice as better. But I think ultimately you still need a human element for news because ultimately you're doing podcasts like this that AI probably can't do. And then venture capitalists still need to do podcasts like this to go talk about narratives and things that the future of crypto and future venture should look like. So there's always going to be a human element. I think AI is, again, assisting in humanity's role.
yeah, honestly, actually, because the older I get, the more I realize that something, and it takes so long for any one of these things that happen in my life to be vindicated that like it took me until this age to realize that I actually do have a gift where I get into things way earlier than everybody else. Like now it's like I need to wait like 15, sometimes 20 years for it to happen. It only took like 10 in crypto, but the point is like now that I realize like, oh wait, that's happened to me multiple times. I realize like anybody out there who is able to kind of be ahead of the disruption, they probably have an edge up in this world. So, okay, you guys, we only have a few minutes left, but I have to ask you, Rushi, about the news this week that the Trump family's DeFi project, World Liberty Financial, bought Move tokens just like in the half hour before it was reported that your team was talking to Elon Musk about using Movement for the Department of Government Efficiency. So, yeah, have you been talking to Musk? And if so, like, what would that look like?
Probably can't go into too much details, but I think generally the government is looking at blockchains in general. I think the original impetus for this was the Bloomberg report that Doge was looking into, blockchains in purpose to transparency. So right now, like there's big expenditures like defense and education, et cetera, and the public doesn't really know where the money is being allocated. I think this is a funny story that in the last administration, there was $50 million in condoms sent to like Palestine. And the question was like, where are these? Like, is this actually needed? Like, why are we spending money on that? So I think ultimately the public is asking for transparency. Doge itself is working on transparency, and that's one of the best parts of blockchains, right? It's a transparent ledger for data. So they are exploring different avenues for involving crypto and ledgers. And yeah, the Trump family took a big bet on Move and purchased Move, and we're proud to be one of the few American coins elected by the president.
And actually, wait, so I keep hearing this term American coin. Can either of you describe what that means in a world of decentralization other than the coins that are more decentralized more centralized?
I think like in the past, every founder and their mom was scared of launching a token. Like you have like BVI Cayman entities, you have Dubai, and like we have Singapore. And then about a month ago, the president of the United States just YOLO'd a token from Washington, D.C. And that kind of took down all our norms of like, okay, what's legal, what's not legal, right? So like, I think the made in the U.S. thing is also like more like the U.S. is a capital for innovation, and obviously the administration, whether you like it or not, has increased the view of crypto globally. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, Trump himself, like owning multiple crypto assets and pushing crypto as a national priority. So I think like now there's an edge in being an American crypto company. I think we'll see pretty much talent consolidate in New York and San Francisco, where founders have incentives to be American crypto company, like whether it's tax write-offs, whether it's tax benefits for U.S. like tokens per se. So the Made in USA thing, I think, will be an important tagline for this presidency.
Okay. And right before we go, I just so curious, Olaf, because you have now been in crypto for 12 years or 14 years. What are your thoughts at seeing it, being made a national priority and all this stuff?
Like, if you asked myself a long time ago, it'd be surprise. right? I think if you asked myself a long time ago about pretty much anything in crypto today, you would be surprised. But, it's interesting. The launch of Bitcoin was really only possible because it was censorship resistant. And it was in that term is the implication was censorship resistant against nation states, right? And the idea was, Silk Road was live and Bitcoin was like this adversarial alternative system where the mentality was this, like every other private, quote, private or alternative monetary system will be shut down if it can be. And it, at the beginning, Bitcoin was sort of viewed as this explicitly criminal thing for many years, I would say. But it sort of like in part was that because everyone in it acted like that sort of. And I think that now, it's gone more and more and more mainstream and gotten more and more usable. And it turns out that so many different things can be built on top of this. Like it's not just, this e-gold. It turns out it's also all of finance. It turns out it's also like social media. It turns out it's AI wallets and bank accounts, right? So I think that like as the use case expanded also, it's just become less and less relevant that this be censorship resistant against nation states because it turns out nation states aren't explicitly against this anymore. And you've actually seen that too in like the security properties that the market looks for. A long time ago, launching a coin, it was like, this has to be nation state resistant or it's a scam. That was like the mentality of your average user. That obviously is not the case today. And so I think it's great that, we've basically gone mainstream to the point where we're over the gauntlet and this is legal now. For the first time ever, I think, I've spent many, many years helping people launch crypto coins or apps, built on crypto. And like, it's never been explicitly legal, right? Nor has it been explicitly illegal. But I think for the first time, it's like, okay, this is allowed. And like in America, right? So I'm excited for it, but it is very much a shift from like the origins sort of Bitcoin.
Yeah. I know. Just when I look back at kind of all the ways that crypto has changed across all these years, it's, just surprises every which way. So you guys, this has been such a great chat. Where can people learn more about each of you and your work?
I'm at Rushi Manche on Twitter, Moving Labs XYZ on Twitter.
Yep, and I'm at ZXOCW on Twitter. And then you can go to our website, polychain.capital, and you'll find a wealth of information about what we do.
Perfect. Well, it's been a pleasure having you both on Unchained.
Yeah, thanks, Laura.
Thanks so much for joining us today. To learn more about Movement, Olaf, and Rushi, check out the show notes for this episode. Unchained is produced by me, Laura Shin, with help from Matt Pilchard, Juan Aranovich, Megan Gabus, Pam Majumdar, and Margaret Curia. Thanks for listening.